Well, guilty. The three former Minneapolis police officers charged in denying George Floyd his civil rights at the time of his murder were convicted on all federal charges. The jury's decision came down after nearly 13 hours of deliberations. Floyd's murder at the hands of police led to hundreds of protests across the country. It's also furthered conversations around policing and minorities. Brittany Moncrief takes a look at the history of policing from the slavery era to today and its handling of racism and poverty.
There's a history of policing here in the United States, one that we may not be aware of. We're familiar with the phrase to protect and to serve, but that idea may be different from its initial purpose. America's history of policing begins in the 1700s, colonial days. As Rhodes College Dr. Dwayne Loynes explains, slavery fueled the economy.
So a lot of this begins in 1704 in South Carolina with the advent of slave patrols.
Made up of white men.
They were organized to surveil Black bodies, intimidate Black people, enforce discipline.
By the end of the 1700s, enslaved Blacks in Charleston, South Carolina, not only worked on plantations, but in the cities as well.
So you have the creation of this force known as the Charleston City Watch and Guard in 1790s or so, and their job is to do the exact same thing.
It wasn't until years later that we saw a formal police department around 1838 in Boston.
They don't start because they're a response to injustice. They start because in the 1800s, you have rapid industrialization and you have all of these immigrant workers, all of these people who are working in factories, and they're saying, wait a minute, these wages, these working conditions, it's not fair.
As a result, the Boston Broad Street riots with 15,000 Irish immigrants protesting.
The military's called in, and the white and wealthy citizens of Boston said, you know what, we need a force to tamp down on civil protests and maintain the social order as we have it.
The next year, the police department formed. In other cities, that pattern continued.
So when you have the formation of these initial police departments, it has nothing to do with justice. It has nothing to do with crime. It has to do with maintaining social inequity and maintaining the status quo.
So where does to protect and serve come from?
Well, that comes from the LAPD, and they had a local magazine for police officers called Beat Magazine. And in 1955, they had a contest. We need a good motto for the LAPD. And one officer submitted to protect and to serve.
A contradiction from its history and what we believe today.
We're still thinking police do one thing, and we're not willing to admit the sad history that policing has never been about protecting and serving the general population. It's always been about maintaining social control.
As with the war on crime and the war on drugs. So how does this impact minorities today?
What they're really getting at is this question: how does it feel to be a problem? Not to be an individual who has problems.
No justice, no peace.
In America, when you're a Black body, you're perceived by definition to be criminal, to be dangerous, to be more prone to criminality. And now you're engaging with law enforcement officers, and it's their job to deal with criminals, to deal with problems, to deal with people who don't belong.
A fear powered by the faces of individuals such as Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. So how do we fix it? There's reforms such as more focus on mental health and hiring minority officers.
Here's the dirty little secret. Studies indicate that Black police officers are just as brutal against Black bodies as their white counterparts.
Why?
If a system is problematic, it doesn't matter who you plug into the system, you're going to get the same result.
The second option, radical change.
We have to radically reimagine what we mean by public safety, and we have to essentially start this thing from scratch.
By pressing restart, you've got to hone in on racism and poverty.
Give people hope, give them a way to support their families, and stop excluding people from the opportunity to improve their lives based upon race.
In Memphis, I'm Brittany Moncrief.